Charles Burnett, I'm so happy to have you on Bullseye. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Had you watched The Annihilation of Fish in the 25 years between when it was playing film festivals and when it was...
I watched it for the first time, actually, at Vidiot's, which was shown. I think it was the first time. I'm not quite sure. I was busy with helping with the coloration, the timing, and so we were looking at some things then. That was probably the other time I've seen it since, like 20 years ago, whatever it was.
What did you think about it?
Well, it's hard for me to judge because I was looking at the different things, what was technically needed to be done, and so it's kind of hard to sort of look at something at the time you made it, and see if it still shows up and things like that. And so I was more worried about that,
You were like, is that yellow the right yellow?
Well, I was worried about is it gonna work with an audience, now, because this was done and like I said, 20 years ago or so, and so it was probably had more relevance then than it did now. So I don't know.
Was the fact that it had never gotten distribution something that made it more of a sad memory?
Well, it was more of a sad memory, not because of that, but because of James Earl Jones, Margot Kidder, and Lyndon Childs. They passed on, and it was, and looking at the film, that bothered me. It's sort of like I wish they were here. I wish they could have appreciated the sort of the response the press gave it, and so that's what I was concerned about. Looking at
watching the movie, I was reminded of just the presence of James Earl Jones. Like, there's 3 legendary movie stars in this movie, and James Earl Jones is so radiant; he just blows everything else off the screen.
He's such a good person too.
Yeah,
it was really wonderful to work with him, and then Redgrave. The whole cast was great, So I was very pleased all the way through. In fact, I wish it had kept going. We had more scenes to shoot. It was just fun working with him.
There's a few moments where he breaks out into laughter, and you just think, well, that's why you want to look at a movie star.
Yeah.
To have a moment like that.
Oh yeah, he was fun. He's a good person.
It's an almost but not quite fantastical film. And there's this James Earl Jones' character is presumably schizophrenic, but there is like a little grace note, which is that when he wrestles the devil and throws him out the window, the leaves shake. Was it important for you to acknowledge his reality in that way?
In a way, yes, because what is real to him and what is real to someone else is really, it depends on and how you see it and who's seen it, And for him, it was real, just like for Poinsetta, who was Lynn Redgrave, she believed very strongly that she had an affair with Puccini, and if you have that mindset, I guess it's real to you, So we wanted to make it somehow ambiguous, Maybe there's something, maybe there's some truth to his illusions and things.
Something that I noticed in James Earl Jones' character that reminded me of some of your other movies was the thing that motivates him to fight this demon is that it is his job. It is his work to do in the world. That work is eventually, spoiler alert, replaced by love, but it's his job. And I feel like you have, Killer of Sheep in some ways is like about showing up to work.
But for him, it's his purpose. He's doing something constructive and positive, and he's just not staying around. He actually has a mission in life. This to fight the demon, this evil person in the world, So his ideas and why he's there comes from a much higher and more empathetic place, So he has a lot of good qualities about it.
I mean, even if your job is a miserable one, the purpose that you're pursuing when you show up to that job is take care of your family, take care of yourself, have a place in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, he could be either one of these people that you see on the street out front here. We have these ideas and these notions, and we believe it that they have a purpose, and still, because of circumstances, they're sort of like trapped in this environment, and I guess because of the way things are, they couldn't find their purpose, or whatever. So,
What movies do you remember going to see as a kid?
my mother liked movies a lot, and so we were a lot aware of a lot of the older movie stars, because she was a great fan of older movie stars. But like The Postman Rang Twice and things like that, and Shane was a big one, High Noon, all those things like that. And then later on, when I was in college, like the New Wave and things like that, and French films and third row cinema and films were very important, because I was trying to find my what film should I sort of like sort of follow and sort of learn from. And it was those earlier films. Hollywood in the early days was making some really good films, and they made some bad ones too. I mean, we can speak of Birth of a Nation and a bunch of other films, but they did have some films and they had some good TV shows on TV where, and like the $1 Million Movie used to come on, and they used to have some good shows. And I remember one of the movies that really fascinated me was that one about the talking mule. I can't think of it. Remember that one?
Francis the Talking Mule.
That's what it was. Yeah. And things like that was very great. But I watched a lot of the comedies like Laurel and Hardy and Charlie Chaplin. A whole bunch of films like that were very important. And I like cowboys. Yeah.
Did you go see movies in the big movie theaters downtown?
I did, and in fact, what happened was, I used to work downtown at the library, the main branch of the library, and I was going to school, and so I would leave school, and have all this time, free time, and I'd go down to Los Angeles Theater, and it was a palace, and it was great. It had these vaulted ceilings, so to speak, and you can come in the afternoon, because I worked in the evening sometimes, and I would just sit in the theater and just rest, and they would play this really beautiful music, this sort of like the myth of Lawrence of Arabia and all these sort of things, Spellbound and all that sort of thing. And so I just sit there and just relax, and that was my world for a long time. Yeah.
Was it still pay once and sit there all day, like feature film, cartoon, newsreel type thing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I saw Lawrence of Arabia on the big screen up there, and it was just beautiful, and it was there, I think, that I really committed to wanting to be a photographer, or a film, a camera person. And but then I was working at the library, and so I had a chance to read all these photo magazines and photo journalists, and that really captured me. I loved watching those looking at those black and white stills of things that happened, what they would capture in the streets of New York or wherever, and that was another thing that sort of pushed me toward making films and documentary films.
When you were an undergrad at UCLA, were you living in South LA?
Yes.
What was it like to go back and forth between the campus world of UCLA in the early mid '60s, which must have been a lot?
It was a different world. I mean, I think what happened was going to LACC was a really great experience, because it was a transition where it sort of prepared you for the UCLA, which was basically just one of the things about LACC. It was very diverse. People from, it's the first time, because I came from like Fremont High in South Central, and it was only Hispanic and Black and things. That was it, and so UCLA is surrounded by Brentwood, Bel Air, and all those places like that, real well-to-do, and so that was a big change and difference, and I had more in common with the people at LACC than I did at UCLA. So,
what was it like making the bus ride every day? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it was a long ride. In fact, it was a combination of bus ride and streetcar. You know, LA had streetcars and electric cars and things. It was, I would say, it was a very decent transportation. And it would take me about an hour and a half or something like that, maybe 2 hours. Particularly if it's a rush hour, it was just endless, you know. And it took a while. And then back was another long journey. But it was, you know, common practice, and I didn't realize it wasn't that strenuous or anything.
When you were in college, it was getting into the mid-'60s.
Mm-hmm.
Did you have an eye on what was going on at UC Berkeley and what was happening at San Francisco State and what was happening, for that matter, on the campus at UCLA?
Oh yeah, I mean, you had Jackson State, Kent State, and Berkeley. In fact, I was trying to think of the name of some of the students over at Berkeley that they were like well known, you know, even everywhere. I even can't think. Someone asked me about the name of this particular person, and I can't think of his name at the moment. He was one of the, I guess you can say, like, he had a name of being one of the leaders of the protest movers at Berkeley, and up in San Francisco. It was really an exciting period because, you know, here locally you had the civil rights movement, you had, you know, Martin Luther King, you had Malcolm X, a lot of things going on, you know, here. And, you know, when you go to UCLA, you see it's an open door, like so much freedom. People could do whatever they want. At the time we were going to UCLA, it was only like $15 or $25, you know, for a quarter. And so it's the only place where you can make films cheaply, you know. And so I just stayed there until they kicked us out, you know. A lot of us did that, you know. They actually told us, hit the road, you know, because, you know, you're taking up all the space, and enrollment was.
And they had cameras and film and places to develop your film, and
the student union, you know, food, everything was dirt cheap, you know, and you know, you know, you can get all sorts of benefits from being in school, you know, and so why leave? And, you know, I mean, I knew that the only way I could make film and to continue to make film was to have the access to all this equipment and soundstage and stuff like that. And so there I was, and a bunch of us had the same attitude, you know, that we stay. And so it was, and plus you met a lot of nice people, a lot of great people that were there, like other students who they had to work on your film, you had to work on their film, you had to work on their film. And that was a good experience. Yeah, those were the days.
Did you find that writing and eventually filmmaking were exciting for you in part because you had a speech impediment and read slowly, and so?
Well, I didn't join groups and things like that because I was more or less a listener, you know, and because of my speech impediment, I sort of like stayed in the background and things, and I had other things. I used to be in class and looking out the window rather than looking at the blackboard, you know, daydreaming or something. But I was always interested in the kids I grew up with and trying to understand their lives and why we were so different. I mean, I think that one difference of having the advantage of going to college at UCLA gave me a different outlook on life. That's when I started changing my attitude about telling stories and about how to tell a story from their point of view without my imposing my narrow views on the world and on them. And so I wanted to make a film when I did Kill or Sheep about how they saw the world, how they themselves, without me imposing upon them, you know.
That's the way nature is. I mean, the animal has his teeth, and the man has his fists. I mean, when a man's got scars on his mug from dealing with some of every day for his natural life, me and Smoke here, we taking our issue. You be a man if you can, Stan. Maybe.
You wait just 1 minute. You talking about be a man, stand up. Don't you know it's more to it than just with your fist? The scars on your mug, you talking about an animal or what? Now, you think you're still in the bush some damn where? You here, you use your brain, that's what you use.
That really changed my whole attitude and approach to filmmaking was having seen that, I spoke a different language than the kids I grew up with in a certain sense. If I wanted to represent anyone, I could only represent my views, and that's it. And so, because one of the things we did, we were under this illusion, this romantic notion that we spoke for the black community and stuff like that, which was totally ridiculous, And you speak for yourself, and they do themselves, and whatever it is. So, so we were at UCLA at the time trying to discover how do you make a film that tells our narratives, that reflect our values and things without imposing or distorting reality.
There's a famous scene in Killer of Sheep, a famous shot, where the camera is in a dark alley between houses. It's looking up at the space between the houses into the sky.
Yep.
It's daytime. And there are children jumping from roof to roof. And that isn't something that I saw as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
But there was this thing that would happen where kids in the neighborhood that I grew up in would hide behind cars, parked cars, and then jump out in front of moving cars in the middle of the block. And I remember the feeling of that, like when I was in my early 20s, I lived in the Western Addition in San Francisco, and I drove a Dodge Dart, a 65 Dodge Dart, drum brakes. And these little kids, 8-year-old kids, would jump out into traffic on Webster Street, and I'd have to slam on the brakes to keep from hitting them. They'd laugh and laugh and laugh and get back in, right?
Yeah.
And that shot reminded me of those kids because it is both an everyday thing and a defiance of death and an exercise of power, right?
Yeah.
It's like, it is both a joyful play, but it's terrifying.
Yeah, I'll tell you what's worth is when you look at those scenes as a director and you say, I asked those kids to jump over that 3-story building. And if they fell, I didn't think about that. Every time I see that thing, I think about but those kids did it every day without me telling them. So I had that, sort of strange justification saying, well, they would do it anyway. But no, we asked, that's when I had to question my whole self as a filmmaker and the things I would ask to do, and things that we do, because you can be behind the camera and shoot anything. We used to, the things that we did that were so dangerous. We would play in the street. It was very exciting, let me put it that way. Exciting. But I was, we used to play in the street and run in front of cars, all this kind of stuff. Not as probably like you guys did up in San Francisco. But I got hit by a car playing in the streets like that.
The feeling that I remember as a driver, as a young man, was, you have this flush of terror,
Oh.
and then just this sadness about a kid whose only power in life is to risk their own life. You know what I mean?
Yep, I know. But I don't think you think about death like you do as you get older, and you start worried about the lives you have, years you have left. But there, you never think about, it could be tomorrow, it could be the next day. And kids are dying all the time, enough. I shouldn't say all the time, but enough for in front of you, and that's the bad thing about it. And you still never grasp what it, not so much what it, understand the end of life, but for what it means to your parents and your friends and relatives and on down the line, how they would feel. And I think that's the thing we don't really understand until later.
I've heard you talk several times about your relationship to promises you've made to yourself, your relationship toward your what you see as your responsibilities. You're 80 years old as you sit before me. Do you feel comfortable celebrating your accomplishments, what you've done, rather than thinking about what you owe the world still?
Well, the films you make, they're not perfect, and so every time you see these imperfections and things that you say, oh, I should have did this, and this is what I wanted to do, this, and so it never ends, and so you never feel comfortable really sitting there watching them because you say, oh God, and there's some things where you take some chances and it didn't work, and it bothers you. Maybe it doesn't not bother someone else, but every time I look at it, I just close my eyes and say, oh God, let me get past this particular segment or whatever it is, and things like that. But it's not perfection, but it's always this thing of that one of the things about having the ability to do a film, and there's so much to be done, that you put everything in the kitchen sink, and the icebox, and and someone says, put that in another film, but you got to say, oh, I got to put this in there because I may not get a chance. So it's like this thing of being starved all the time, that you sort of just, your eyes are beating in your belly, you want to eat everything up, and someone say, relax. You're like, there's some more in the icebox or refrigerator, whatever it is you get to. But it's like, you may not get the other opportunities. So it's always this urgency and this thing of learning how to edit.
So the answer is no, you don't feel comfortable relaxing and enjoying your accomplishments.
Because it's like I said, I don't think they're accomplishments because they're not perfect. Anyway, it's always these challenges you have to come up with.
Well, Charles, I'm very grateful for your work.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Believe me.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Oh, thank you.